We'll be live. We are live. Okay. Hi, folks. If any of you are here yet, we are here sharing for a moment or two. You can see our faces there. You can see us sharing. You should be able to see the promo too, but I can't see that right now. Anyway, it's sharing time.
Wait a minute.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's start. Let me take the promo away, and here we are. Hello, everybody. My guest for tonight is the executive director of the Red Berets from Medicare for All. Her name is Laura Fielding, in case you don't know it by now. And she is now going to introduce us to the Red Berets and give us some context about the organization and how it has developed over a period of time. And we'll say hi. Hi, Jeff Denton. Great to see you here. Dolores, hi. And Steve, also known as Ghost Start, great to see you. And Kay, thank you very much for coming. Please, everybody, share. There are a number of people here who have yet to announce themselves, I see. We're off to a pretty good start tonight. So go ahead, Laura. The con is yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on, Joe.
I just did the wrong thing. But go ahead.
My name is Laura Fielding, and yes, I'm going to stumble. I am a knitter and a craftivist, and I would say a disorganized organizer. Yeah, I mean, the Red Berets, the idea for the Red Berets came about in the fall of 2017. Really, very simply, how I would describe us is a coalition of crafters, artists. Sarah Hansen, who crochets locally, calls us craftivists. And also organizers and people who are inspired by and do actions wearing our work. organizing for national improved Medicare for all, and all strong efforts towards achieving healthcare justice that, in our view, and we'll talk about this more, this fighting on all fronts, it means that we believe that every stitch in the beret, every drop in the ocean, every direct action is actually in service towards achieving national improved Medicare for all. So we don't uh, delineate, uh, we don't find it to be helpful. In fact, we have decades of evidence that it is, in fact, not helpful to silo and separate out organizers and label them into categories such as state-based organizers and national organizers. Every person that I've crafted with, organized with, in terms of people who work, I name Whole Washington a lot because I live here in Washington State. And we'll talk a bit about Whole Washington, but there has also been some confusion about, are the Red Berets Whole Washington? No, we are separate from Whole Washington. However, I live here in Washington State, and Whole Washington, in fact, gave the Red Berets a place to hang our hat. They gave us a home. They were the first healthcare justice organizers that I knit my Red Berets for, and where I met and inspired and am inspired by other craftivists who are also crafting for Whole Washington. And I don't know a single one of those crafters and or organizers, volunteers for Whole Washington, who are not also very strong supporters and have done many efforts organizing directly for national improved Medicare for all. And again, we can go into how that all looks, like a synergistic, multi-pronged approach strategy as time goes on. But so that's really the Red Berets. We craft berets. They are a symbol of solidarity, to unite and bring some visual imagery, some bold visual imagery and solidarity to the single payer movement. They sort of, the idea came out of two different threads. One was the aerial views of the Pink Hats at the inaugural Women's March, and I had voted for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary, but I was not involved at the time. I wasn't really on social media. I wasn't plugged in at all, which is difficult to imagine, but I did live over in the UK for about 7.5 years, studying biodynamic massage and body psychotherapy, craniosacral therapy. So, no, I lived in a little bit of an old-fashioned bubble, and I wasn't really on social media. So there was a lot that I did.
Question.
Yes.
While you over in the UK, did you happen to meet Larry Sanders over there?
I did not meet Larry Sanders, but Larry Sanders is, he has been a supporter of the Red Berets online on Twitter and retweets us a lot. And he can come into the conversation later because we were, through the healthcare justice documentary, Kenny Ballantyne's work, healthcare.movie, we have been in touch with Larry, and we really wanted, I say it as if it's past tense. Kenny says he believes in magic. You just never know. But yeah, Larry Sanders was and is very interested in working with us to bring the NHS, the fight to protect the NHS into this documentary. So it's interesting that you mentioned Larry Sanders, but yeah. Anyway, I hope everyone
He's a great guy.
has an idea. So the idea was from the Pink Hats. I just I did knit some of those because it was actually just a local knitter that I know, like a someone through my son's school that I met who's like, hey, did you know that they're crafting these? And knitters and crocheters tend to find out about these things. So I did knit some and send them to Washington, and I knit some for the Seattle March. And of course, this neat little knitting shop that was collecting them all and then sending them out to Washington, D.C., had, when you turned in your hats, you could fill out a little card, a little piece of paper that to attach to each hat to say what were your issues that you care the most about, that you would want the marchers who would be wearing your work to know about you. And I put Medicare for All on the hats that I sent to Washington, D.C. So that was prong number one of the idea. And then the part where it kind of came to fruition was about, if I could, later in the fall, in October of 2017, I was watching an old YouTube, a rally on YouTube of Roseanne DeMoro and Dr. Jane Sanders and Bernie presenting to national nurses. And then that just then I started to remember the aerial views and thought, oh, that's what we need.
Can do the red.
We need a peace army. That's it. So it has to be a beret, because we need to fund healthcare, not warfare. So, and then with the berets, we try to let people know there's not any specific pattern. We do have a pattern up on our website, but also we just want people to knit and crochet and sew. Scott Desnoyers, who is an activist out in New York, who you might be familiar with, he
Yes.
did this beautiful ink and pencil drawing of a beret that he gifted to us. So, and Fran Sylvia's daughter, Fran Bauer, she's at Vote No GMO on Twitter. She has created this beautiful imagery. All the photos that I've shared of our work and of us doing actions, or sometimes if somebody has a healthcare story or a healthcare quote, and they've worn a red beret before, she'll get that picture of them in a red beret. She'll put you'll be in a red beret really soon, Joe. So then we'll have a meme of that, and then we share that out. So I guess my point is I want to convey to people there really is a place for everyone within the Red Berets, because you don't have to knit or crochet. You can create art, and you can bring the policy knowledge, right? So
Yes, indeed. Yes,
yeah,
indeed. And there is Fran Bauer on cue.
we were just talking about you, Fran. You missed it. Yeah, I think that's good for now. That was a long introduction, but I think that's I don't know.
Very conversational.
I mean, is there something you would like to say or ask, or should I keep talking, because I can do that too?
Well, what I'd like to ask is this the appropriate time to get to strategy? And hi, Sandy Degg, how are you? And Carmen Muniz. Oh, by the way, Carmen says that had the idea that for Florida and for the hot states, perhaps there should be red sun visors.
Yes, I remember that. I'm sure I remember her suggesting that. And here's what I say to that. I think go with it. People probably want to know, well, what kind of structure have you put around this? Is there a board? Are you a nonprofit? Are you any of this? The answer is no. This is a free idea. Everybody can, which is a little bit kind of like, whoa, that's kind of scary. Anyone could kind of take off with this, and that's exactly true. People could start knitting and crocheting to protect the ACA or for a Medicare for All advantage or whatever, right? But I think we've spent so much time developing that people know us to be very, very strongly for getting the profit motive out of healthcare. National improved Medicare for All is what we're crafting for. And yes, we are crafting for strong single payer efforts at the state level, because And I always feel like, and I want to say, because here we are with your audience, this is absolutely brilliant that that the MMT community is coming together to kind of uh, share your knowledge, and I have some ideas for how we could kind of create some synergy with Red Berets and getting the word of MMT out there. But here's the thing we're not going to do, or at least I'm not as a crafter, and I know that the people that are organizing with me are not. We're not going to stop organizing with direct democracy and fighting on all fronts, doing everything that we can, because if it's very important to know how something's going to be funded, but it is an issue if that's the only lens with which we look at how we just determine the strategy. And if we only look at the Medicare for All movement and how we build a movement through the economic lens, that is not enough. That is too limiting. I mean, for example, I don't know how I can stress this enough to people, and I thought we were at a point where I wouldn't need to stress it, especially to people that are strongly attuned to what's going on. But let's review. We have a president who said that he would veto Medicare for all. Um, we have a Congress that is almost entirely corporately owned on both sides of the political aisle.
Right? We have a Speaker of the House who has said she is opposed to Medicare for all.
That's exactly right. So it really, we have to be getting out into our communities, and we've got to force this. This is why we came out so strongly for force the vote, because we really have to force this into the national conversation, and we don't do that by dismissing strong efforts that are happening, especially when we do have historical precedent over 50 years ago in Saskatchewan province. And, you know, I think, Lisa,
Yes, right. But I want to remind you also that you helped us out at that time too. The people who were forcing the vote in order to replace Nancy Pelosi on January 3rd. I distinctly remember you tweeting in support of us, okay, at that time.
yes,
I think it's very unfortunate that the people who wanted to force the vote, only for a floor vote, okay, on Medicare for all, were drowning us out, okay, at that time. Because if we could have persuaded the squad to withhold the speakership, okay, from Nancy Pelosi and to get someone else in, a speaker, I think we'd be in a lot better shape with respect to Medicare for all at this point in time. But anyway, I remind you that I've always been very grateful for that you did help us then.
yeah,
So
yeah. Yes, absolutely. It does make me curious to know, did you know? Because that did seem to be. Uh, what am I trying to say? I remember seeing a lot more about that, and that's probably because some of you were pressing forward with that, which I was all on board with. You know, absolutely replace Pelosi. I wonder what happened. I wonder if it became the case that they wanted to focus the mess. Go ahead.
we were drowned out actually by but Jimmy Dore and Katie Halper, okay, and Bree Joy Gray, very famous names who were emphasizing just a floor vote, okay, for Medicare for all as the price, for voting for Pelosi. And okay, I think that was unfortunate because what we were emphasizing was that if they replaced her, it would then have been possible, okay, to negotiate for a number of floor votes for Medicare for all, for Green New Deal, for student debt elimination, paid family leave, a number of different things, and rules changes, specifically rules changes in Congress so that it's easier to get a floor vote. In other words, how would you like a situation where 20 co-sponsors for a House and a bill could get a floor vote? If there were rule changes in the House, and that kind of a rule change, it would be possible to do that. And then, of course, good committee assignments for members of the CPC. That's very important, in terms of exerting power. They got very little from Nancy Pelosi. Very, very little. Okay, because of the way they negotiated with her. When I say they, I mean the squad people.
Yeah.
They held her fate in their hands, and I don't know, I don't think that a good thing. But this gets us off the topic. Let's get back to Red Berets and to strategy there. The bottom-up strategy versus the top-down strategy, the fight on all fronts strategy, the multi-pronged strategy, the whole thing.
Yep. And then that sounds great. And then let's just earmark this, because let's consider the future of how Red Berets could potentially help shape a campaign. That would be something that would be of interest in the future.
Oh, good, because I'm happy to do some talking about that, because I know how it would be possible to get rid of Nancy Pelosi and not have to wait until 2023 to do it.
Right. Okay, so yeah, that sounds like something we should definitely talk about. So right. So to get to the point of for the people that still, and I don't mean that there aren't legitimate questions or concerns. I appreciate the live feeds that you do, where you very specifically break down the strategy of the states where it's possible in. I think that people are still under the misunderstanding that we're saying it's possible in every state. That's not the case. It doesn't need, you've made this point on your live streams a lot. It doesn't need to be every state. I think is it 25 or 28 states that have the power to do a ballot initiative, and not necessarily all of those states would be viable candidates for being able to do healthcare at the state level. But what we need,
we would have to go over the details, okay, of each states, but the kind of cost estimates, okay, that Jerry Friedman is doing for Washington, suggests that very, very many states would be able to do this at the state level.
Yeah, enough to create. People have said, well, it's going to take more than one, and that's really likely. But and I also there was, you and Lisa were talking last night about it being we need to prove to people that this is possible, and that's a valuable piece of it. But I would also say, in terms of, because I think through the movement building lens of this, and I think that what people desperately need right now is to see there's still people fighting for me. There's still energy in this movement. It hasn't all withered out and died. So we, in those terms, we don't even need a win yet. We don't even need Washington State or New York or any of these other states to win in order for this to be some service to the national Medicare for All movement. Because I think one of the most harmful and dangerous things to the Medicare for All and larger kind of progressive movement is the defeat, the sorrow and the defeat. And let's not pretend that that we, through Bernie's defeat or the establishment kind of coming together to, I'll use the word cheat. There was a significant amount of cheating and media rigging and all of the stuff that went into that. So 2 times in a row. So but let's just talk about, and then Nina Turner's, the establishment turning and doing the same thing in the case of Senator Nina Turner recently. So, and then what happens when people don't see the Progressive Caucus fighting as hard as they need to fight and organizing, being not just elected progressives, but being the movement leaders and the movement organizers, that we sent them in, at least most of us, sent them in not to just fill seats and vote progressively, but actually to, because we know there's not enough of them. This is never in question. There are enough of them to go in there and demand that this stuff gets talked about, that it gets pushed for, that it gets fought for, and they have a peace army that they can call upon to say, okay, this is what we're doing, and we need all of you, and this is what we're doing. So this is all. None of us are expecting them to be able to vote beyond their capacity or how many of them that there are, but they can mobilize and stand with their movement. And let's not pretend that that's what's happening right now. Although I did tweet out gratitude. I do feel grateful that Representative Cori Bush showed up for us in DC.
Yes.
You would have had some people who said things like that was a photo op, that was this and that. And I think to myself, I stood right there, feet away, and listened to her take about 45 minutes of face-to-face tough questions. And that's fine. That's what she's elected to do. I'm not saying, oh, she shouldn't take the questions. No, but she came with one person, one staffer, and sat and listened to people ask, why didn't you force the vote? Those sorts of questions. And then what she said to me when I presented her with the Red Beret is, oh, I've been wanting one of these, and now I have my own. Thank you. And of course, we remember where she came from. And I just feel that her coming and feeling that grassroots connection and energy, that's the other thing that I would say to all of them. If they could hear this interview, I would say, please link arms and touch fingertips and come meet with the grassroots more. You need our energy. You need to be reminded of who you are, because we still believe who you are. We want to believe who you are, but you lose yourself in that DC swamp, that DC mess, So we're here for you. We're here. When we push, it's because we want you to succeed, and we can't afford a movement that is direly and desperately depressed, that is giving up. The only thing that is like a death knell to the Medicare for All movement is when people legitimately begin to believe it's not possible. So to get back to this fight on all fronts strategy, when we have people trying to dump whole Washington or any other state efforts overboard, just understand that you're pouring cold water on the people that have fought and organized the hardest. People that are willing to work on state level efforts are people that we're not just in it when there's a Bernie Sanders, although Bernie Sanders is the one that brought me in, right? But when people are willing to actually work on efforts, sustained efforts, and not just when there's an incredible movement leader who's running a presidential campaign and a sort of, and I think people drastically, when they think about, like, we could have had Bernie, or we almost made it. And he said he was going to go rally in every single state. I think people are really, really underestimating the monumental amount of work that would have needed to be done, even if we would have got Bernie Sanders into the White House. That was that we would have had an enormous amount of work cut out for us. And we need organizations like Whole Washington that are constantly going out and growing their database, because we're inviting new people to opt in, and they not only get emails and text messages on stuff we're doing for Whole Washington legislation, but they're going to be informed if we have a barnstorm supporting national nurses who are supporting Rep. Jayapal's bill, for example.
Yes, and there's an important thought here as well. We have all this work that has to be done because we need a movement that is going to be pressuring 24 hours a day. And why do we need that? Because the lobbyists are there 24 hours a day.
Yep.
they have the ear of the politicians continuously in Washington. We have to have a ground game movement that's doing the same thing from the bottom up. And I'll give you a little social science at this point, okay, as to why there is. There is a famous law, quote unquote, in the social sciences. It is, okay, the iron law, okay, of oligarchy. And what the iron law says is that basically when you start a new organization, okay, or a new movement, it starts out, okay, as a bottom-up movement. Always starts out, okay, in that way. But in a very short time, when the movement becomes an institution, when it establishes institutions, okay, to represent it, there's kind of an iron law, okay, of institutions which brings power up to the top, which always creates an oligarchy at the top of the institutions. Once the oligarchy is there, the members of the oligarchy have an incentive to freeze things, not to have new leaders arise from the bottom continuously. That is not their incentive. Their incentive is to protect their power. If the institutions are bringing in income, it's to protect their share, okay, of the income. But it's about status, it's about power. It's actually about also connections. The people they rose with, they have ties with, and they don't have time for new people. It's very hard for them to recognize new people. It's very hard for them not to think that, oh, the new people are going to displace us. So these institutions tend to harden. Just a few people are running all the institutions. And supposedly that's an iron law that happens in the social sciences and that dooms democracy. Okay, that's what essentially the iron law was about. That's what happens to political parties. That's what happens to pressure groups. That's what happens, okay, to everybody. So that presents a problem to us. And that problem is, how can we structure our movements, okay, and our institutions in such a way that they are always bottom up, so the oligarchy isn't able to freeze, so new blood is always coming into them, so the elites are always circulating. That's a key problem in the social sciences. It's a key problem for democracy. One thing I see Red Berets as doing is trying to solve this particular problem before the Red Berets, because that's what it means to have a democratic organization. And I know you're all about small d democratic.
Yes. To this point, there's been very, very little. That might not be entirely accurate. There's been fairly little. It's funny. There's a lot of structure in a beret.
Yes.
Our structure has worked, which is really just that we're a coalition. I mean, everybody knows that my voice is really loud, and I'm Laura Fielding, and people maybe think Laura Fielding is the Red Berets, but
that's not so.
It's not so. Look at
so. It's like you have a situation like a cooperative.
Mm-hmm. That is right. Yeah, that is precisely right. And one of the reasons Lisa talked last night about how we've done little projects, particularly on social media, because that is how we've that's one of the ways that we've really grown the movement or let people know this is what we're doing. Is we've sorry, I got distracted with an in-cut with a message. But like take Warren Gunnell's feed, his Twitter feed, for example, and during during the primary, Lisa and I and Fran and a few others, we just sort of travel in Twitter circles together. One of us will see a tweet that we want to amplify, and we'll go there. And this is why we hardly have why our accounts are kind of stifled down a lot, is because the establishment is, well, I don't know what to say, but I feel like we get less traction than we used to. But we'll tag each other in those, and we'll help to amplify something. And I think that, for example, Lisa really knows a lot about healthcare policy and implementation, and so that her voice has been really strong. And then you look at Fran Bauer, who is a retired RN in Florida, and she wasn't crocheting. She didn't know how to crochet. She was doing a lot of the graphic art, but then in 2020, right before Bernie came out to Tacoma Dome, Pete, a crafter named Pete, who basically wrote a song or changed the lyrics of a classic opera, and we all did this song that was like, he rewrote the lyrics, so it's crochet delizia, crochet a red berets for Medicare, and you can look it up. But anyway, so and these stories are fantastic because he was just somebody who he taught himself to crochet as well. He caught me in a time, this is my perception of it. He may or may not know this, but it was a time of like burnout of, okay, I've just been tweeting these red berets and there's a couple of us, and it's just kind of a time of burnout. And I just really said, we need more crafters, we really need more crafters, and I need some help, and so he taught himself how to crochet, and then he tagged me and himself singing a cappella. And I just really brought tears to my eyes. I just really literally started sobbing because this person that I don't even know just kind of really recognized the beauty of the idea, and that I was asking for help from anyone who wanted to help. And so, he taught himself how to crochet. He wrote that song and rewrote the lyrics to it, and that has its whole other story. We now have a pretty finished rendition because Whole Washington helped us put together with the Seattle Peace Choir, and Doug Balcom, who is in charge of or is the conductor of the Seattle Peace Choir. And this was all during COVID. He got all of us, we sent it out through Whole Washington, and we got everybody who wanted to sing, and he wrote a score. You can look on YouTube. There's a score, the Red Berets Song. There's a musical score.
Oh, great.
And it includes, he wrote, and then he even wrote a second verse. I said, oh, can you do like a second verse that includes Nina Turner? This is really just like the power of the grassroots. And although we don't have like a board that makes all these decisions and this, we're just, so he taught himself to crochet, and then Fran was very inspired by the fact that he taught himself to crochet. So she learned to crochet. And now ever since Bernie coming out to Tacoma, Washington, that was the time frame that I'm remembering, she mailed her first shipment of berets out to us right before that. And ever since, every single month, she sends a shipment of red berets out to Georgia Davenport. And people, if they want to order our berets, that's, people are like, oh, the red berets are just Whole Washington. Well, no, for a while I was just giving these away. I gave them away at the Women's March. I don't even know how many of these berets that I'm wearing the one that Lisa gave to me. She crocheted this, and so I get given red berets now, which is lovely. And what was I saying with that? Something. Oh, no, just, Georgia Davenport, who founded Whole Washington, she saw me giving all of these away, and it's fine. We're pretty much socialists, but she also thought what would be a way to get people these berets that they would like to have. And actually, people want to donate for them. It's great to give them away, but people actually do want to make contributions for them. So let me give you this idea. And if you like the idea, great. And if not, that's fine too. And this is just really all due to my lack of tech skills and organizing skills. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's working how it is. I just give them to people. And if people want to order one, they say online they want one, I'll send it to them, and it's all fine. But when she told me, hey, well, we could put them up on the whole Washington merch page, and then this is a way that people can, this is the symbol of National Improved Medicare for All, healthcare justice. And then also, people know that they're contributing to actual ground game and strong legislation.
That was a great idea.
Georgia is pretty much a genius. So, and I really like that idea a lot. And so Fran has been sending a shipment every single month to, now I look online as people post their pictures after they've ordered berets, and the whole movement is wearing either Fran Bauer or Michelle DVA. And it's like, where's Laura Fielding? Oh, she tweets all the time.
She tweets all the time. She doesn't have time
she's not knitting anymore. So
okay, so Fran is here tonight. Okay, Michelle is also here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, and Lisa is here too, you know.
Yes. Well, this is our this is our structure, and it works for us. But Lisa and I have been brainstorming, like, okay, how could we do want it to remain, like, I love the idea of a co-op. That is, that is exactly, we don't want to incorporate, we don't want it to turn into a top down, and we don't want the creativity of it and the sort of grassrootsiness of it to be hampered in any way. So what Lisa and I were talking about today, because it does need to have a little bit of some kind of structure in order for people to be able to participate. This is the issue right now. We can't really grow the movement very much, other than that I know there's crafters all over the US who have popped in to share their work, tweeted it out. They're doing whatever they're doing in their local communities, and that's what I've tried to kind of express on Twitter. And I do have a little YouTube channel that I sometimes go live on and make announcements. But as people can I've tried to get people the idea out there and to say, this is an idea we had. If you are living in, Pennsylvania, or do your visors in Florida, or do little mini berets and make them be buttons or something, that's whatever you want to do, because I realize that Texas and Florida and some of these, it's just too hot for it. But I really hope that people are taking this idea and running with it and getting their needles and their hooks and their stitches, and the sky is the limit. Really, whatever you envision, if there is we can talk, you mentioned one payer states before, maybe that'll come in a minute. But if there is a state effort that is a good, strong state effort, and you've looked into, you being the crafter out there who's listening to this, and you want to plug your efforts in to those organizers, I say do it. Get some local crafters and form up a little group. If there is a strong Medicare for All candidate, whether they be running as a progressive Democrat, or if they happen to live in a district where they think it might be possible to run a challenge as an independent or a Green Party or whatever. One thing we really have tried to do with Red Berets messaging is to say, these are for everyone who is working for towards national improved Medicare for all. I happen to have done my amount of time organizing as a Democrat. I don't want to pour any more efforts into that. We actually did a local fundraiser for Pierce County Democrats, where we raised we were able to cover and donate, and it covered about 1 month's worth of their union hall rent. It was no small thing, and I did that because I wanted to show them the power of how we could grassroots fundraise around a platform issue. But I determined fairly early on, my stomach hurts when I go there. I don't want to participate in a party that won't even put Medicare for All on its platform. I think that we do need a lot of strong pressure from the outside. And so again, I'm kind of for this inside outside approach. If but Georgia Davenport is she's a state committee member. She organizes very effectively what she does within the Democratic Party. I know I can speak for her when she says that she believes that the Washington Democrat Party is worse off than it was when she entered it, when Bernie called to action and got everybody to run. That it's in a bigger state of mess than it was before progressives started to take it over. I
have a question about that.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's in a bigger mess now?
Well, I think that would be a question for Georgia. I shouldn't speak so much for her. That's a very interesting question, but I think earmark that for her.
Okay.
And I would just say that, what she's always advised me to do when I asked her, like, should I run for PCO, for precinct committee officer? Should I run and become active in my local LD? She said, I don't really advise people or not advise people when it comes to getting involved. You have to look within yourself. But she said, I wouldn't go into it with the idea that you're going to change the party changes you. But if you are willing to utilize it as a tool, for example, taking whole Washington to the good of the order and going and getting LDs to endorse whole Washington and see if they'll put some pressure. And as long as you're there, understanding the constraints that are limited. For my own self, I determined that I don't want to utilize my energy in that way. And I do believe it's just corrupt through and through. How can we have 70% or more of people that want this and that know that we need this, and then they fight so hard to keep it off of their national platform? I don't want to participate in that. And there are
with respect to primary voters, 88% of the primary voters.
Yeah.
But so far as the Democratic Party is concerned,
right,
are for Medicare for All.
Right.
And so why can't we have candidates from that party who are for Medicare for All if we have 88% of the voters who are for it? Well, we know why. It's because of the iron law, of oligarchy inside the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah, and so there are, I know that there's a lot of people, especially out, and people need to still remind themselves that the online left, the Twitter left, is not where most people don't even know who, these media voices, these people that everybody fights nonstop about. They don't know who Brianna Joy Gray or Jimmy Dore or Katie Halper or the Vanguard or... I'd like them to know who these people are much more. But the fact of the matter is we're a very, 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 very small select portion of the population. And we need to ask ourselves, actually, how do we grow our numbers? Which is why when I see people undermining state organizers who are actually getting out on the ground, it's very frustrating, because we do actually have to continue to grow our movement. There's not enough people like myself and Lisa Theobald and Scott Desno and Sharif Snuggs. There's not enough of us to go around. We need more of us. So what I say is, just to return to what I was saying before, this fight on all fronts, we need all good efforts. And you will see me be really critical of the Democratic Party, but you don't see me on Georgia's feed or Jason Call's feed saying, you need to leave the Democratic Party. Why are you still running? Jason Call is someone who I strongly endorse. I am moving forward. I'm going to be very particular about which Democrats that I endorse. It's not enough for me personally. It's not enough to see somebody just say, I'm running on Medicare for All. that's a horrible word. I've contributed a lot of money and organizing time uh, to the electoral strategy to Bernie Sanders. I donated to Nina Turner and donated to a lot of campaigns. So it's just the fact that my litmus test is really high. I need to actually see that the candidates that are asking for my support, I need to really see them out there walking the walk. And for me, at least in terms of Washington State, I know I can count on Jason Call because before we suspended the signature gathering of I-1362 really recently, he was out doing events, gathering signatures. He sits on the board of Whole Washington. And Rebecca Parson, who's running in my district, she's another person who has endorsed Whole Washington and is who is willing to get out and do legwork. So I do have a very strong litmus test for people that are running as Democrats, simply because I do believe that the corruption within the Democratic Party all but squashes all good progressive once they get in. So I am, you will, people will note that on social media, I'm pretty strongly like, I'm going to be in favor of outside pressure groups like People's Party and Green. I do. Uh, but again, it's a thing of like wherever your energy is, where you want to spend your energy. You know what I mean? That's what I just think we can be critical of certain things, but let's be mindful that if somebody wants to if they're still invested in helping uh, elect a Democrat running on Medicare for all, I'm going to let them do that effort. I might not put a lot into that at this point, but I hope that they go on and do that because that's some drops in the pond. Everything that's in service to getting this messaging out and fighting on all fronts, pushing this forward in any way we can. And I would just ask for the same courtesy that people don't come saying, stop gathering signatures to try to get health care for some people in this country while we live in an oligarchy. I mean, it's a head scratcher. I still don't understand why there's, I mean, legitimately, we are.
The reason why they're in this way, I think, is because they can't get past the point that there's more to the question, there's more to the problem than just the issuer of the currency, okay, and the user of the currency.
Yes.
It's hard for them to accept the fact that states do have power, that they're another vehicle that people can use to get what they want, that they are powerful enough to give people some, of what they want. And so they resist getting into the details of what the economics, or at least the finances, would show, but for each of the states. Now, I have a lot of sympathy for the point of view that states have a greater number of obstacles because they are users of the currency. They don't have the same degree of fiscal sustainability as the country does, the nation does. However, if you look in Stephanie Kelton's book, you will see that she points out that there are degrees of fiscal sustainability, that the countries, that are monetary sovereigns, they don't have any fiscal sustainability problem. But there are many countries that are not monetary sovereigns. The whole, of the Eurozone is full of nations, that gave up, their monetary sovereignty. Yet some of those nations are still economically very powerful, and very capable. For example, Germany. You can't compare Germany, well, you can't compare, but the point being, Germany is far more over to the side of the fiscal sustainability continuum, that the United States is on, as opposed to Greece, which is all the way over on the opposite end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because of population, it's because of industry, it's because a whole host, okay, of economic factors. It's because of balance of trade. With Germany, they always have a balance of trade, okay, which is very favorable, which is bringing them foreign currency. And we have to consider, for them, okay, the euro is a foreign currency because they don't have the power to issue the euro. But their trade with all the other nations brings them lots of euros. And so they can afford lots of things because they traded the goods for the euros. So you have to take a look at all of those kinds, okay, of factors, and you have to take a look at the economics of the economics of the policy that you're trying to pass in the first place. If that policy is going to save everybody money, obviously it's going to improve the fiscal sustainability of the unit that is implementing that particular policy. And our argument for state-based single payer from a fiscal sustainability standpoint is that it does strengthen the fiscal sustainability of very many of the states, possibly even all of the states. It's going to depend on the details
Mm-hmm.
of how much money it will save, okay, in each of the states.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, getting back to fighting on all fronts, though.
Well, one of the questions that was never answered throughout all of these multiple threads that happened on Twitter was I would ask, what is your timeline and strategy for achieving national improved Medicare for all? And is there an event or something that we can amplify and we're there like 100%? Because nobody in whole and just to say, Red Berets in support and coalition with whole Washington. Nobody's arguing this point that it would be far better and more ideal to pass NEMA tomorrow. Everyone agrees on this. It's a point of agreement. But when it comes down to, I think it could be pretty easy to argue the point that in terms of what's easier, neither is easier. I don't like that word. What is more possible or feasible to pass? Let's talk about gathering for it's you're in a really you're in an oligarchy when you say all we have to do is gather 400,000 signatures, get it to the ballot, and pass it by simple majority. I am absolutely certain that that is an easier mountain to climb than passing national improved Medicare for all. I don't know how I don't know. I want to see what people's plans are for people seem to think that all we have to do is place a ton of pressure, and we do need to pressure. I'm not arguing that point. I love that I'm seeing, March for Medicare for All put this pressure on the Ways and Means Committee, chair of the Ways and Means. We need to keep demanding and doing these direct actions. But the fact of the matter is there is a way that a bill becomes a law in this country. And I'm so confused because I don't understand did we not just see what happens to one strong progressive, what the establishment was willing to pour? And I know that's their argument is probably the same of, well, look, are you aware of how much money is going to be dumped in opposition onto whole Washington? Yes. And that's why we have people like we have organizations like One Payer States, .org, and we have Georgia Davenport, who behind the scenes is helping to get the information out to organizers in other states. Here's how you set it up. Here's who you can do to look to do the study. Here's how we set up our nonprofit. And here is everything we've learned about running a ballot initiative. Don't fall into this pitfall because we learned this in 2018. Oh, we actually just learned this. Now we've got all of this knowledge that since we just had to suspend our second run. And of course, see, this is a microcosm. Working all this effort at the state level is a microcosm of everything that needs to simultaneously be going on at the national level. So, for example, whole Washington has been going toe to toe with the insurance, with the powers that be. And now what we know, now what we get to tell everybody on public record is whole Washington could not get a public hearing for SB 5204. We still have our bill. It's still active in the legislature. We had 7 Senate co-sponsors, which is double the number of co-sponsors that we had the last time we introduced the bill. We still could not get a public hearing despite 7 Senate co-sponsors. We can tell everybody the makeup of the state Senate Wealth Care Committee. I'll call out Senator Annette Cleveland and say she is a Democrat. The committee is comprised of 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. Jason Call, who's on the board of Whole Washington, looked at all the FEC filings, and collectively, that Wealth Care Committee has taken over $1 million from the insurance lobby, pharma, and private hospitals. That's why we can't get a public hearing. And now what we're going to do is the next time Kenny Ballantyne comes on up to Washington State to film again, we're going to go down to Leah and Steve Perkles, who have their own healthcare story. They're in tons and tons of medical debt just due to not being covered because he had lost his job at the time. I don't know all of the details, but they were interviewed for Kenny's healthcare movie, this documentary that we're involved in. And we're going to go down and do a public pressure campaign on Senator Annette Cleveland. And why is this important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons. I would argue we need healthcare hearings all over this country. If you're in a state and you as a constituency can demand that public hearing, we need public hearings at the state level. We need to televise those. We won't ever see it on the corporate media, but we need to get this out there. And then we need to continue to demand hearings for our federal legislation. We need to be heard. We need to grow our numbers. So again, this is another reason why it's like, hey, don't only look at this through one lens. You also need to look at what we've learned in Washington State. And this also helps it links the electoral strategy, because now we know exactly who needs to be primaried, starting with Senator Annette Cleveland. And Leah, I hope you're watching this, right? So we are, it's in Washington State, because of Whole Washington, we just have we have our coalition partners. Obviously, when we signed aboard the March for Medicare for All, it was an easy task to reach out and ask the coalition partners of Whole Washington to come aboard and become coalition partners of the March for Medicare for All, because we work together. They support Whole Washington. They know the work that we've been doing. Oh my gosh, there's marches for Medicare for All. Yeah, we want to sign aboard and do that. And also, we just work hand in hand with people like Jason Call and Rebecca Parson, and people who, we don't really separate out the electoral strategy along with, our legislation and our ballot initiative efforts. This is what Whole Washington really has taught me as a fairly young organizer, and that's because we were all just learning, right? And Whole Washington has not gotten sort of the recognition we've worked very hard to try to get some attention and some endorsements from some of the bigger organizations. And that,
Right.
yeah,
So let me ask a question, okay, about this. You seem to be painting a picture, okay, of sort of a tapestry,
yeah,
okay, and the movement is a group of people coming together cooperatively. First, okay, as craftivists, okay, to knit, okay, but also not simply to knit, but to take a whole range, okay, of other actions that that represent the strategy of fighting, okay, on all fronts.
hmm,
These kinds of actions involve getting perhaps some resolutions from city councils,
yes,
perhaps. Okay, also doing various kinds of local marches,
hmm,
signature campaigns
yep,
of some sort. Okay, of other to pressure. Okay, are you also for strike activities? Okay, of various
absolutely.
kinds. Would you support direct actions
Yes, absolutely.
that way?
Uh,
So,
yeah,
if there were a coronavirus, a general strike for Medicare for all, then that would easily entail the support, okay, of the Red Berets, I assume.
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
100.
and if you were into that sort of action, okay, as well, uh, then you would also be in favor, okay, of actions such as the whole Washington action to get a single payer bill passed in Washington. But for you, the support, okay, of whole Washington, though very important, is just one part of the web or the tapestry that you're trying to weave. The
Yeah,
outcome of the movement is actually this particular tapestry. In other words, that's the end result of it. And part of the tapestry is the passing of single payer bills, okay, at the level of the states. Okay, and also part of the tapestry is all the pressure events,
yes,
ultimately the achievement of national improved Medicare for all. That's also part of the tapestry. It may be the most important thing, okay, in the tapestry, but it's only one of many things
yeah,
um, that's in the tapestry. So now my question um, um, is as follows: if we're fighting, okay, on all fronts, and we're engaging in all manner, okay, of activism that seems relevant for getting us closer to Medicare for all, then what does our strategy look like for creating those events? What kind of planning do we have inside of the movement to respond to certain events or certain pressures from the outside with actions we support in order to bring the day of Medicare for all much closer? That's the question.
yep. That's a great question. I'll start with what I started to mention, and I sidetrack myself pretty, or I'm very tangential in my thinking, or maybe there's a lot of points that are connected up. So
Yes, I think there are. I
yeah,
think there are a lot of points, okay, that are connected. Your
yeah,
thinking kind of reminds me of a network.
yeah,
It's network thinking. It's not really linear thinking.
correct.
And that's all to the good. I don't think what we need here, okay, is
No, but it can just get difficult to follow, maybe for some people, and I don't know if, like, I always love the way that Andre Stackhouse, when he communicates, it is in quite a, linear, just way that's quite easy to follow, and that's good. But there's different ways of communicating, and I don't need to make myself wrong about it. This is how I think. and therefore that's just who I am, and people will. I'm not that difficult to follow, but yes, I need to loop back. That is right. So Lisa and I were talking about, it's just for now in terms of growing and reaching and bringing in ideas that certainly exist out there, but how do we begin to harness them and learn about them and share them with other people? Is for now as simple as we're going to start doing, and we'll post it up on our website. We're going to start with just, and it probably should be more often than this, but I'm going to be really honest and say for now, it's going to be a monthly forum. It may go to, if I could get some, a couple of different people to want to host it, we could spell each other and take turns, certainly. But for now, like what I'm willing to commit to is once a month. And I kind of have a structure in my mind, and we open it up to everybody so that the Zoom link is there. And it's we really look at this as we're an international, we're everything from the local bottom on up, and we want to reach across the pond, and we do, if there are, there have been people from the UK who have certainly followed and retweeted, and Lisa Theobald and I on Twitter, we've certainly amplified and retweeted these, anytime that the hashtag Save the NHS is trending. We've worked to try to amplify all of those efforts because we know that our fight right now absolutely is going to be in service to countries who have achieved this over 70 years ago, but who, their systems are now on the chopping block. And so if they would take our, please, UK, do not rest in your comfort zone because they're coming for you.
Yeah, just to say a short thing, okay, about that.
Yeah.
They have been on the shopping block, on the chopping block, I should
Yeah.
say, but really because of the ideology. Okay, in other words, it's the neoliberal ideology which was so dominant, okay, across the world, that puts them on the chopping block because there is this notion, okay, of austerity.
Yeah.
That somehow the currency, okay, is limited, and that there's only taxing, okay, and borrowing, but there's no creating, okay, of money. However, the UK is one of the monetary sovereigns of the world, and it does create, okay, its own currency. Okay, it can always do that. And so there's no logical reason why the NHS should be on the chopping block over there. And as the ideas of MMT start to spread,
right,
spreading over in the UK as well, there are strong MMT activists over in the UK. And they are spreading the news. And there are more books over there that are popular. Okay, not only Stephanie's book, but Bill Mitchell has written, okay, a number of books that are popular over in Europe. Okay, and other MMTers, okay, have written books, and the ideas are spreading over there, and that's part of the way that you get the NHS off the chopping block. So
all we have to do, we're already on our pathway of bringing the Red Berets to the MMT community and asking, how can we help? How can we bring the bold imagery of the Red Berets? And we're doing it right now. You're educating me, and we're exchanging. We're exchanging here, and then we're saying, oh, so all we need to do is to mobilize some crafters in the UK and make sure that they get linked up with their MMT community, and that becomes. So just to get back to this
right, because they are actually ahead of us. They already have the national program, and their national program is better than NEMA because it's an NHS program.
Yeah.
And all that needs to be done to save it is to get people to see that there is no fiscal sustainability problem over in the UK, that it's a fable.
Right. Right.
We have to get them to believe that. Now, that's a lot easier than the problem we have here because we don't have a national program yet. And our decision makers are totally against, okay, the national program. Over in the UK, they're trying to take away something that people already have, and
Yeah.
people are very resistant to that. What
Right.
we're trying to do is to get people that thing or something very like it here,
Yeah.
and it's been very hard to get that over the hump here, especially through the neoliberal period. But as MMT takes hold here, it will also be easier, I think, okay, to get over the hump here.
Yeah.
Part of the national political problems, okay, that we're looking at involve old people, aged people who have been there for a long time and who are at the top, okay, of the political aspect, okay, of the oligarchy. Joe
Mhm.
Biden, Nancy Pelosi,
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer, all relatively ancient people, all the committee chairs
Yeah.
in the Senate, all the committee chairs in the House. They're all old, all steeped in the neoliberal form, okay, of thinking. It's hard to get them out. If we had time, which we don't, for all sorts of reasons, we could just solve this problem just by watching them die off.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't
No, we don't
have the
have
time.
time.
What we really need to do is get them to retire.
Yes. So, the hope is that on this monthly community gathering of craftivists and uh, organizers and community of the Red Berets, it will have a little bit of a structure. But I, one thing I mean, I don't know how long we'll spend. I don't know what is a good length of time. I guess we can let it be a little bit organic at first. Um, but I want to make sure, because see, I tend to lose the crafters a little bit on Twitter because we go so political with it. And it's a balance. So I want to make sure that whatever the time is together, I think an hour is possibly a little bit too short, but anyway, we share out the link and we have it on our website and we start to get the word out. Hey, we meet once a month and it's an open forum and everyone is welcome. Everyone who wants to fight on all fronts. Craftivism is the connective fiber. It's the connective tissue. So we will obviously have either a short video tutorial or a sharing. Michelle Devier is an incredibly talented crochet artist, and I'd love to just give her 5 minutes of the floor, telling us what she's been working on. Or Fran Bauer, who, and some of these people are like, no, Laura, I don't want to be put front and center on. But I do want to make sure that we give a little shout out to the crafters. We maybe we spend a few minutes like letting people know this is the craft. This is what's connecting this movement. A lot of the times, the crafters who we have yet to reach en masse, they don't want to be out on the front lines, or maybe they are otherly abled and they're not able to be out on the front lines, but they can sit in their homes and craft, or maybe they have anxiety. They can be any number of things, right? Or they just want to craft for a good cause, but they don't want to be all in the weeds. You tell them healthcare is a human right. We need healthcare. Everyone needs to, shouldn't everybody be able to go see a doctor? Yes, even someone who is, if you remove the personality from the issue and the particular politician, and then just ask all those women who created hats for the Women's March, do you think healthcare is a human right? Do you think that everyone should be able to take their little child to go get the care that they need? The answer from almost, I'm going to say all those women, or the overwhelming majority, is going to be absolutely. Okay, well, then let's get crafting these. We are crafting for healthcare justice. We are crafting for marginalized communities to have care free at the point of delivery, whatever. So we need to reach the crafters. So in this forum, we need to make sure that we open something where people who are not crafters can feel welcome and they will have some space. But additionally, we don't push the craft out, because the craft tends to get pushed aside, and we can't do that because it is actually what the connective fiber is that's holding it together, and that's kind of the inspiration behind it. So that would take a little piece of the time. But then also we would want to, we can invite a new sort of guest on each time who, for example, you come to educate the group on everything that you just said about the NHS. And actually, this is as simple as getting the word out to enough people, right?
Yeah.
And we can invite people like Scott Desnoyers, who is an incredible solidarity organizer. He and I, and so many from the Red Berets movement, he is in the Red Berets movement. We see eye to eye. He doesn't see Medicare for All organizing as, oh, you're over there in that organization and that's what you're doing, and I'm over here. And if I kind of lift you up, then maybe there's less room for me. He doesn't think like that. He lost his son.
I know.
And so I've got pictures of him from when we first started collaborating together, and sent him Red Berets, and the picture is perfect in it. He's got his photos of Danny in the background, and he's got his, at the time, Bernie 220 sign, and he's got his red beret on, and he's got New York Health Campaign t-shirt, and he's got his whole Washington button. Sema Hernandez, we made Sema in a red beret, some little handmade buttons. He puts the hashtag Danny Strong, no one fights alone. He and I and Lisa and Fran and all of us in our little coalition, Georgia Davenport in our coalition of Red Berets, we understand that when we boost somebody else up in the movement, it just boosts our own cause. This is not a competition of, I wouldn't want to amplify New York Health Campaign because actually Washington State should be the first. I mean, are you kidding me? That's if people don't see me boosting,
that's completely counterproductive.
And if I usually boost New York Health Campaign through Scott because he knows what's going on with them. And so you'll have seen that I just retweeted something that he sent out. He just did an action with them on Wednesday, and he's going to be keeping us informed about some actions that they're going to be doing potentially that we can try to get see if it lines up with Kenny Ballantyne's schedule to go out and get some of that and help put some pressure and return some of the solidarity to him and to New York that he paid to whole Washington when he flew across the United States to help us pressure Representative Kilmer. This is the solidarity that this movement needs. It does not need, you're not allowed to do this over there. We don't want you doing that. No, we actually need, yes, thank you for being out and being outside of Rep Kilmer's office. Thanks for getting and gathering signatures. Let's go over there and lift up New York Health Campaign. They need some pressure over there.
Just to ask a question, okay, of you. I have the impression that Scott is someone with an MMT background, okay, because I seem to have heard that he was part of RP for some time and was actually quite close to Steve for a while. At least he thought he was a good friend of Steve's. Have you heard this?
In the thread, yeah, there was definitely some comments that I read. I feel like, I don't know the background of that, so I feel like you know.
Okay, I'm not sure the background is so important. I'm not actually
Yeah,
trying to get at that here.
yeah,
I was simply trying to make the point that Scott is one of the MMTers, okay,
yeah,
in the Red Berets movement.
yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. He did come in and talk about how he understands it. He's read or learned about it, and that is not going to stop him from fighting on all fronts because he believes that we need a massive pressure campaign, and you don't take away half your pressure, like I said just a little bit earlier. Your ground game really are that the overwhelming majority of our ground game are people who are doing a multi-pronged approach. They're people who are out willing to do local actions because we're going around because there isn't a pathway right now. I feel sometimes like I'm beating my head against the wall. If somebody can tell me I want there to be a magical strategy. I'm not trying to be snide about it. If there's something, but if people think that this is just merely a matter of um, pressuring, and I have news. I don't trust the co-sponsors that are aboard uh, Rep Jayapal's bill. Not all of them. Certainly, I'll name one that I don't trust right now. If push came to shove, Adam Smith in Washington State. I mean,
Okay, here's another one.
yeah,
Hakeem Jeffries
sure,
is a co-sponsor of that bill. And
right,
certainly, he cannot be trusted
exactly.
as a
So
supporter.
while every time we get a co-sponsor aboard, I mean, I'm both, oh, it's great to see people do that. And then I also know that more often than not, it's a political reason that and I don't mean to be entirely cynical, it's just true. So it boils down to, I mean, obviously, if co-sponsorship meant anything, then our vice president, remember everyone that she was a co-sponsor of Bernie Sanders' SB 1804. She stood on that platform and co sponsored that bill, and she did it so that she could be considered a viable 2020 candidate, and for absolutely no other reason. She's adamantly against Medicare for all. It was a sham that and Scott Desno has plenty to say about, he has a story with Vice President Kamala Harris as well. That's his to tell. But the point is, it's not just a matter of pressuring these people to co-sponsor. We cannot count on them to pass it. We really actually need almost an entirely new Congress, and that is daunting. That if people really look at that, they would probably, I wouldn't blame them for saying this just isn't possible. This is a pipe dream. I don't really look at it like that because if we do look at the fight on all fronts strategy and all these stitches connected together and all these drops in the ocean, I believe that all of these things are going to be adding to the pressure campaign, and hopefully that adds into.
But we also have to keep in mind that one of the big things against this is not so much the opposition of individual congresspeople, but it's that power structure I was talking about inside of the House, okay, and inside of the Senate. And as these people begin to pass on, okay, and new leaders take over, that presents a new opportunity, okay, for influence. So, okay, I think it is a useful thing to get as many co-sponsors, okay, as you can.
Sure.
But certainly, even though you realize that maybe half the co-sponsors, when push comes to shove in the present situation,
Correct.
are not really for the bill. But once the present leaders pass on,
Mm-hmm.
and there are new leaders who may not be pressuring in the same way, or who may not have sold out to the pharmaceutical companies, okay, or to the insurance companies in quite the same way, then you might not have quite the same pressures on people who co-sponsor. And there are many of them who may decide that, well, maybe they really are for Medicare for all. In the new political situation,
Right.
they're not going to be punished for
Yeah.
being for Medicare for all. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to go up against a Nancy Pelosi
Yeah.
who's raising about $300 million every cycle or $400 million every cycle to throw into the hoppers of the candidates.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you get someone who takes over from her and who can only raise maybe 25 million or 50 million or something like that, that person is not going to be as influential.
Yes. Yeah. That's a really good point. So, and all of these things that we do are we're trying to make a paradigm shift. We're trying to somehow come together and reach critical mass and keep putting the pressure, and that's just a really good point that you make. So I think that is why I do lean towards it is possible. It's hard to see under the current circumstances as they are, but I do believe that we can flip some things.
Right, but this relates to the fight on all front strategy
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
Because even though perhaps some of our primary efforts should be in state single payer situations, okay, or should be at local levels, there may come opportunities like the opportunity we had on January 3rd to get rid of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
And maybe the next time people can be persuaded to take that opportunity.
I sure hope so.
Move her. And for us, pressuring from the outside,
Yeah.
we can decide to take that opportunity and throw our whole weight in back of such an opportunity. Because, after all, it takes only a few weeks of time at that point if the opportunity presents itself.
Yeah.
And that leverage then can be very decisive.
Yeah.
So this is a fight, okay, on all fronts, including the national front, including the state level front, including the local areas,
Yeah.
including different kinds of direct actions. But I come back to the question, okay, that I raised earlier, which is, can we formulate a flexible and highly adaptive strategy to changing situations that will not be a straitjacket for us, but will be a framework that we can use to adapt to change as the changes go on, so that it lets us recognize opportunities and tells us, oh, this month we can gain a lot by doing this kind of action.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 2 months from now, it's this other kind of action. And maybe suddenly this situation has arisen. But if we pressure here, it fits our overall strategy and advances our overall strategy. I think that's the kind of movement, okay, that we need.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's the kind of movement the Red Berets is.
Yeah. Yeah, and how I think I was I don't want to think of myself as an autocrat or an authoritarian or anything, but I know that control issues are kind of a thing for me, and I wanted to make sure
Control issues?
I wanted to make sure that I slash a few people who understood kind of the vision. I mean, if you're not going to put a structure around something, a strong structure around it, then I just didn't want to sort of lose total control of the messaging. But I feel like we've done it. It's the idea is out there, right? So I'm just hoping there's crafters out there and activists out there who are plugging this idea in. I want to remember Sharif Snuggs had a amazing suggestion for us. It was like you should have a national knit-in. And so this has started to, because we were talking about marches and how there could and should be marches or direct actions throughout the year. And I want to return sort of to how did the Red Berets, how were we inspired? And how were we actually connected up to Whole Washington, which was through a nurse seeing me saying knit for nurses in the 99%. So Catherine Lewandowski, vice chair of Whole, not at that time, she wasn't vice chair, but she was a volunteer of Whole Washington, messaged me and said, I think this is a really wonderful idea, and I want to hear all about the Red Berets. Can I drive down and visit? And I want to hear about this. And this was clear back, in the fall of 2017. And she drove down, and really little, she just wanted to recruit me for Whole Washington. No, I love you. But it was but she said, you should definitely, if you don't know who Whole Washington is, you should get involved. And then it was in December that so that was probably in November, like late November, when we had that meeting, or even early December, I'm thinking. And then I found myself down in Olympia, Washington, just at this little house party / fundraiser for Whole Washington on December 23rd. And Georgia Davenport was there, and Mariana Everson, who RN, who is our chair now. So because I am on the board of Whole Washington, so I do say we a lot, but the Red Berets of Whole Washington, that's where I met all of those. And I do want to say, so the Berets, we are the connective force, but we are because we're nurses inspired. It's the nurses that are connecting. They're the heart and the heartbeat of this movement. And not just nurses. We love our Dr. Dooley as well, and
and your Dr. Joe Jarvis.
And our Dr. Joe Jarvis, he was next on the purple, healing the purple world, and this is the thing. We will be, you see, there's actually some purple and some different colors in this one. You'll see Fran and Michelle DVA and all of them. We work different strands into these. We don't want anything too set in stone. Creativity has to continue to be welcomed, or otherwise people will get bored, and they'll also just, you have to let artists and creative people express themselves and do that. So, but I'm saying the healthcare professionals are the ones that are magically connecting this movement. And it's because they are holding the health, or in the case of where we're at now, they are having to shoulder the brunt of so much illness, so much sickness and pain and suffering, and these people that can't be seen. And it's a horrendous thing that we just take for granted, or maybe we don't, we turn away from it, that this is actually our caregivers are having to shoulder the emotional burden of our cruel and dysfunctional system that actually systematically murders people, disproportionately people of color. And we all know the realities of this. So I lost that thread again for a little bit of a second. But if this is the thing about the bottom up, and it is the thing about trusting this idea that came to me, and I really want to say, no, it's not Laura Fielding. I just sure knew where to guide this movement, and I said knit for nurses in the 99%, and that brought a couple of very key nurses into my life. And now, the idea has appealed to a couple of doctors, and these are people that are connecting this movement up. So and Lisa's wonderful quote that I love, and I say it all the time on Twitter. She said, let's craft the fabric of our future. And so that is what we're doing. And we want to be of support to our nurses and our healthcare providers. So to this idea of maybe we have this monthly meeting, and it may not be frequent enough, but for now, let's just think about it as an opportunity for the community to come together and people to share a bit about I mailed off I mailed off my box of Red Berets to Hull, Washington. That's what I'm up to on the crafting front. Michelle DVA. I've been making little tree ornaments. Laura asked me, can you make some mini berets and some things that we might use? We're heading into the holidays or the different. We're heading into crafting season because it's getting to where it's going to get colder and crafters are getting busy. So let's think outside the box. Sarah Hansen is someone who helped us think when Bernie wore the mittens. She said, "Why aren't we? Well, we should be knitting and crocheting Bernie's mittens for whole Washington." So this is the thing: is there is not, and she knits and she crochets snoods as well, which is they kind of drape on the head. We have not wanted to make people feel like there's one way to do it, and it's this, and not this. If you want to, whatever you want to craft, this is really about bringing some craftivism, and I like this idea of a national knit-in around the time of going out in protest and in solidarity and support of the nurses and the frontline workers who are shouldering the burden of our cruel and unjust for-profit system
Yeah.
and being visible in our craft. So of course that would mean that everybody can come out and be there with us with their signs, but I'd love to get crafters out and get them to be visible. But in order to do that, we have to grow the movement. And I have these questions in my head all the time, and not just in terms of how do we invite crafters to join our movement, because 8 to 10, I could probably over time I could say that we probably had 20 or 25. I mean, I'd have to sit and run a list down my head of how many people, maybe more like 30 different craftivists have contributed anywhere from a few berets a piece to many, many, many berets over time. And I myself have knit probably close to or around 350 red berets. I think Lori Jackson, who is not on Twitter, has crocheted a ton. Fran's up to a lot. Michelle's done a lot. We're getting the red berets out there, but and again, we don't only have to support whole Washington with our work. People can get there, and also craftivists who make ends meet, and they're actually trying to earn a little bit of income. I also say to them, you don't have to donate all of this to the movement. Put them up on your Etsy page. Say this is a red beret. It stands for Medicare for all, and someone will come, and you want to share that with me on Twitter, I'll share it out. I do want people to feel that there's a great deal of flexibility in this idea. Crafters do deserve to make money for their work. It's hard work. It's hours and hours. It's a labor of love. You do not have to feel that you advocate for Medicare for all, and you also have to donate it all away. Just say, here, these are on my web Etsy page. They're for Medicare for all. Then everybody that goes and orders that, you're still doing a service to the Medicare for all movement. Somebody sees that they're ordering a red beret for Medicare for all, and that's you don't owe anything to the movement. But
Yes.
if that individual crafter wanted to say 10% of each beret or 20% of each beret goes to the Medicare for all candidate of your choice, or I don't, if it was during the Bernie campaign, it would be such and such percentage I donate to Bernie Sanders 220. Really the possibilities are limitless, and I don't want people to feel caged in by it. The only thing I ask the general community to help me get the word out is, well, it's not the public option red berets. That's not what we're doing. But again, we can't control that. If people want to knit and crochet for a public option, then people can and will do that. That's just not what the red berets for Medicare for all are doing, and I suppose no, we're not even going to get into that debate, but
Right.
yeah.
So I think that we've covered all that we set out to cover tonight. Since we wanted to talk about the bottom-up strategy, and we wanted to talk about fighting on all fronts and what that actually means, and we wanted to talk about the character, okay, of the Red Berets. I think that character is as a cooperative, a craftivist movement, okay, that's in a position to influence various other activities and events towards getting NEMA for people in the United States. It's actually, in that sense, for a while, at least until NEMA is reached, it's a single issue movement. Okay, it's not a political party. It's not a generalized kind, okay, of revolutionary party, okay, of any kind. It's focused on getting this thing accomplished.
Yeah.
And it's doing it actually through through a cooperative structure. It might be possible for the cooperative structure to spawn formal organizations outside of it, or to support the formal organizations, but it itself is not a formal organization.
Right.
It's a cooperative, and as a cooperative, it gathers people from the bottom up. Continuously, it is gathering people from the bottom up. Have I got it?
That is very well put. Yes, you have it. I mean, I would just say, any ideas how we can gather more people from the bottom up? But yes, that is what we're doing, and that's the
Yes, I do have some ideas about that, but let us hold those for another time because we're going to have a lot of other opportunities. What I like to do, okay, at this point, because I very much value bottom up stuff, okay, is to go to the comments that people have made. There are lots and lots of comments. Okay, I noticed. So I am going to read them out, and we will both be free to reply to the comments. Okay, so Michelle Bativillier said, crafting is not something a one percenter is going to appreciate. It is for the grassroots. It is Victorian-esque. I thought that was a very good way of putting it. And, okay, I think I agree with that comment. Okay, I'll select some others, okay, as we go down. I'm at 920 now, okay, in the thread. So Lisa said, I suppose this was in response to Carmen Muniz, who said, let's just vote out all the crooks in the Senate House, period. Start with brand new blood. And Lisa then said, they fear their power. I'm not quite sure what she meant about that, but if she's still here, she can certainly clarify that, and we will get to it. Carmen said, but Lisa, little girl, self-loathing, self-sabotage. Is it an underlying trait, okay, among Democrats and progressives? Republicans don't have that issue. They loathe others, not themselves, not their cliques. That's an interesting comment, I think. Fran said, Laura for president.
I'll knit for the we'd still probably have work to do once we get I do feel like we have a lot of work to do, even if we get another opportunity. So
yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay, and I also think that the President of the United States has to be someone who can manage a very, very large organization.
That's not me, but
Okay,
I'll live for it.
it's a different kind of thing
Yeah,
from someone who was the leader of a cooperative.
yeah,
They both have very important functions. Okay, but if you have a bent towards socialism, then the ability to lead a cooperative is a very rare ability, and it takes a lot of hard work, and it takes a certain kind of character. That character has to be extremely positive and extremely appreciative of all the work that goes on inside of the cooperative. And if I can just say, that's what I see in Laura, that kind of leader. And no, I don't think you're a control freak at all.
Oh,
Okay, so going forward, down the scrolling down, we're at 9:30 today, and Fran Bauer tells us good news today. The LA City Council passes hashtag CalCare, hashtag AB 1400 resolution. And she gives us the Twitter link to that.
nice.
A lot of remarks. Jordan Sheraton said earlier today that even if Bernie was president, we would not have Medicare for all right now and would still need to fight.
Yeah.
And all of this nihilism is a dead end road. So let's avoid it. I don't know if Jordan said that or if that was a comment of Lana, okay, on what Jordan said.
Mm-hmm.
The opinion I have about that is that if Bernie had been successful in 2016 and was president in 2017, that would probably have involved a landslide by Bernie in the election of 2017, because I don't even think it would have been a close election if he and Trump, had matched up. And given that there might have been a landslide, there might have been a big majority for Democrats in both the House and the Senate. And since the way American government works is that in the Congress, there is always a presidential party. That is, there are always people within the controlling party who always vote with the president, okay, with the party leader. They may be as many as half the leaders of the party. People like Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, they are rare people. They are not at all the majority, okay, of the Democratic Party. If Joe Biden wanted Medicare for all right now, he could probably have Medicare for all right now, because an awful lot of Democrats who are not now for Medicare for all would be for it if he wanted to do it. If Bernie were president and had even a bigger majority, okay, in Congress, I think we would have Medicare for all right now. If he had won in 2017 or if he had won in 2020, I think it would have been the same. I think he would have had a pretty easy time in getting it. I even think Nancy Pelosi would have helped him to get it, because one of the major leaders of the presidential party in Congress, if you follow her career, okay, is Nancy Pelosi. Whenever you have a Democratic president, what she does is she finds out what the Democratic president wants to do, and then she does it, or does whatever she can, okay, to do it. She did everything Obama wanted. She fought for him. She was enamored, okay, of him. And now she's doing what Joe Biden wants. This particular reconciliation bill, I'm sure, is not a bill she would have crafted or she would have wanted. It's much too lefty for that. There was some kind of deal constructed, some kind of meeting of the minds that Bernie had, okay, with Biden. And I think that is what has been influencing this bill. That plus the actual power structure in Congress, with there are a large group of the progressives in the CPC who, with centrist numbers in the Congress so short right now, they do have the power of no, and they're starting to use that power of no. And Bernie could capitalize on that. And I think that he and Biden came to certain agreements. They might not have been even explicit agreements. They might have been simply tacit agreements that Bernie would get he would get the kinds of things that he wanted if he could manage them in the context of the reconciliation bills, and that Biden would back him, at least on some of these bills. And I think that's what Biden is doing. And so that's what Nancy Pelosi is doing. And I think that's why we have a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill there now. Now, I don't think that's as much as we need. I mean, if I were the president, I would probably have been pushing for a $20 trillion reconciliation bill with all kinds of Green New Deal stuff in it. It would have been just completely big. But in the kind of system we have now, the kind of alignments that we have in Congress, the kind of climate that $3.5 trillion bill would be a substantial accomplishment, okay, if it gets through. GoStart says, okay, Medicare for All is supported by 65% of the population. That's probably from a particular poll. Just to give you a little historical perspective on that, there were polls showing in the period 2009 and 2010 that often showed that Medicare for All was supported by 65% of the population back then. But what those polls did not show back then was that over 80% of Democratic primary voters are for Medicare for All. That's a new thing the polls are showing. And I think in the end, that's going to prove to be very important. Dave Leith says, awesome, Laura. Let bits of your desperation show through. In a sincere way, of course, and hopefully without alienating people. But always let it come through that it's truth that matters the most, not pleasing everyone. I know you know this, just a reminder, because there are so many people that are even in a more precarious spot than we are. And he leaves a bunch of icons there, which I cannot read in the StreamYard interface. Looks like there are some waves and there's a heart. And there might be some apples there. But I can't see what it is because I'm not actually looking at it through Facebook. But through
I want to thank Dave for joining and watching. He's a local activist and organizer and volunteer. He's a fellow Red Beret. He's done a lot of organizing with me. He's on the mend from a personal injury, but he went out and he's a very, very effective signature gatherer for whole Washington. And what's the other thing I want to say? Just as a little hilarious thing so people can get an idea, because he's organized with the Green Party and such over the years. I have only one picture of Dave Leith in his red beret because I don't know, it itches his head or something like that, right? But I have knit him a red beret, and there was one something important where we felt we needed bodies in the to show up at Pierce County Democrats. He's not a Democrat, but I was like, Dave, we need people there. You got to show up for this. so I don't even remember what it was, but he did show up. And just the irony, I'll share it on Twitter. It's hilarious. I only have one picture of him in his red beret, and it happens that, he's standing and I just find it hilarious because the green exit sign is like right above his head. So I just always think Dem exit. I think, of course, the picture of Dave in a red beret at the Democrat meeting is like under an exit sign. I don't know. I know I entertain myself kind of. I don't know if that's funny for anyone else, but no, like this is the coalition, I just,
So we come to a comment, okay, by Lana, who says that she loves the song. Okay, so I wonder if we shouldn't try to get the song actually played now. It's not really that long, is it?
no, it's really, have you found it on YouTube? Like the,
Yes, I have found it
perfect. Oh, it's short.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, and I should be able to play it here. Let me share that, okay, with people, and then let me play it. Crochet Delicia, crochet a red beret, red berets for Medicare, Medicare for all. Healthcare is a human right, healthcare for everyone. No one is left out, no one is left behind. It's not so crazy to guarantee healthcare, Medicare for all, Medicare for all, Medicare for all. With my red beret. Bernie stands up for us, stands up for working folk, nurses and miners, servers and teachers. Millions of people say enough is enough. We're building our movement as we wear these red berets. It's not just Bernie. It's not me, it's us, organizer-in-chief, with the receipts. With the receipts. And Nina Turner, too. That was brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was truly brilliant.
That's Pete. I can never pronounce his last name, but on Twitter, it's Pete the Burner, not Pat the Burner. He's also a red beret, but yeah, I'll share that out. I'll tweet it out, and so that everybody can kind of follow him. And then, of course, that was his combined effort in that choir was Doug Balcom of the Seattle Peace Choir, and it was really special.
Carmen Muniz says, I thought that was wonderful, by the way. We really enjoyed it here.
Yeah.
But Carmen says, I will spread the word of knitters, crocheters needed to a couple of crafting groups. I follow.
Thank you.
But good idea, Laura. And S. Hansen, whom I think you know.
Yep, Sarah.
Says, that's Sarah Hansen.
Uh-huh.
The Red Berets works because we all believe in the human connection that healing of crafting brings.
Yes.
Hashtag craftivism.
Yep. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's so awesome. We marched. We woman the she womaned the booth. You know, we were the Red Berets of the Women's March. You know, the first real Red Berets bringing craftivism and bringing the Medicare for All platform to the Women's March. That's Sarah Hansen. You know, that's our connection. So Olympia, Washington, 2 years in a row, and of course we brought whole Washington too because we can do both at the same time. So there we go.
And Fran Bauer said, Pete and Laura and the crafters of hashtag Whole Washington inspired me to teach myself to crochet. I adore these activists who are out there, who are busting it for and for all, and I was determined to craft for such a worthy cause.
Thank you, Pete.
That's from Fran Bauer again. Dave Leith says, I like the coalition building messaging. I'll just remind yet again that we also need a growing contingent as a part of these coalitions to be unusually committed to the cause.
Yeah.
Without this, we will not be successful anytime soon, in my opinion. And of course, Dave is quite right about that.
Yes.
Fran Bauer says, why indeed, Joe, why can't we have nice things? Okay, and also Ghostot says the squad are useful idiots, quote unquote, to the, I'm sorry, are useful idiots, are, quote, useful idiots to the establishment, unquote, says Chris Hedges. I don't know. I have a little problem with that. It sounds great, and I love Chris Hedges, and he's a moral voice that we cannot do without. But I'm reluctant to completely dismiss the squad at this point, or many of the other progressives. But two, they are people who at other times did organize, okay, to get elected, did go out to the people, and had a connection, okay, with people, still have a connection to the people in many cases, and is serving them, okay, in many ways. They are the best people, the squad is, we've seen come into the House in many years. We have to keep that in mind. Sure, the system is crushing. It has power.
Yeah.
But these people are learning to operate within it, and they're getting older, and they're getting more experienced. And I wouldn't count them out yet. I wouldn't, and I don't. And so, to answer Fran, I said, that was Stephanie Kelton's question, Fran. She gave an empty answer. I'd give that a plus, okay, an oligarchy answer, plus the money in politics answer. All those different things are why we can't have nice things yet. But we're going to get them in the end. It might kill us, some of us anyway, along the way, but we're going to get it.
Yeah.
And there's one thing confusing people. We have two streams here. We have a Facebook stream, okay, and we have a YouTube stream. But the comment stream, but we can see the comment stream from the StreamYard interface. But if you're at Facebook, of course, it's impossible to see the YouTube comment stream. And if at YouTube, you can't see the people, okay, who are on Facebook. So Lana asks, why can't I see Fran? That's why you can't see Fran, because Fran is on Facebook. But she's very much here. I'm skipping some of the comments because it's late. I usually don't do that, but it is late. because we had so much that was really important to talk about to get a full picture, okay, of the Red Berets. And Jeff Denton says if you come out the problem, if you come at, I think he's intending to say, from an ethical angle, it greatly outweighs the economic angle. This is something that needs to happen, whether it is affordable in the beginning or not, okay, is irrelevant. I have considerable sympathy for that point of view. And the reason why I do is if we get a whole bunch of states to commit to single payer, okay, and to implement a program, that changes the political situation. It greatly changes the political situation. Because it changes the political situation, if it turns out those efforts are not quite sustainable in the long run, the pressure on the federal government to make them sustainable is going to be incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
We also can't forget that if many of these states do successfully implement single payer programs but for a while, then people in states that don't have single payer programs will do their damnedest to get a single payer program in their states. And when they fail, because they will fail in many states because the states are controlled by Republicans who are Neanderthals, then what they will do is they will turn to their senators and they will put heavy, heavy pressure on those senators. And I say senators because they're not subject to the gerrymander. So the Republicans can rig the state legislatures in their states, and they can rig the Congress in their states, but they can't rig the elections for senators. So that will become a place where the people without single payer can pressure for a national program. So the more successful the state programs are, the more that builds up outside pressures in the states that don't have programs to bring everybody to single payer.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important influence with which some of the MMTers, okay, who were opposing whole Washington did not think through. They just look at it from the standpoint, well, once people get single payer, then they're going to say, I've got mine. I've got a pretty good program, so I don't care about the national program anymore. I think there are some people who are going to take that position, but I also think they'll be outweighed by all the people who see the success of the single payer program and will want it by hook or by crook, either single payer bills in their states or getting to NEMA. So I think the effect of the single payer programs in the states is going to be to increase the national pressure for NEMA. And I don't think the MMTers who were opposing that had figured that point out.
And I just want to quickly interject that I know I'm only one person, but I have health care. I have health care for life because my husband retired 21 years from the Air Force. If this didn't matter to me, I wouldn't need to be organizing now for National Improved Medicare for All or for whole Washington. So yeah, we just don't know everybody's story. There are people who are organizing on all fronts who actually do have health care and something else drives them. So let's try to believe a little bit more in the idea that some of us believe that this is the healing issue for the United States of America. I have, many of us have families all along the political spectrum, and we understand that this passing NEMA will heal our nation in many more ways than just one.
Yes.
The healing effects will go very deep. And to those of us who are universal thinkers and actually, holistic healthcare practitioners. Maybe, that is the piece that Lisa points out. You never talk about that, Laura, right? We're healing a movement. We are really we're trying to heal, not just get everybody health care, but look at the systemic harm and the divisions. And I'm not saying it's going to fix everything to pass NEMA, but I am saying it's going to fix a hell of a lot. Let's just look simply at uh, mental health care being covered as just one tiny facet, but huge, huge facet of the puzzle. So just don't assume where people are coming from. There's a lot of people making contributions to this movement who actually don't have to do it on a personal level. And that doesn't make us saints. I'm just saying we're really we come from all over in our ideologies and what drives us. And so
Yes, absolutely.
try to
Uh,
believe in the
uh,
good. Let's try to believe in the good in people. It's hard to see sometimes, but
yes, it is hard to see
but we
sometimes,
but we
but
want this for
it's
everyone.
there.
Yeah.
But in terms of our personal experience, we of course have health care because we have Medicare
Yeah.
and we have a supplement that we can afford, and our copays, okay, are fairly low. And when things get high, we even have a member financial assistance program that gives us very expensive things for free, okay, in the healthcare area. So basically, I've got mine. Why am I out here fighting for Medicare for all?
Mm.
Why have I been fighting for Medicare for all for years and years and years now? Why have I written, I don't know, 40 or 50 things in terms of, getting Medicare for all? Because I actually believed Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he said that healthcare is a human right and it's part, okay, of the economic Bill of Rights. And I remember Franklin D. Roosevelt because when I was a kid, my family would gather around the radio and they would listen to FDR. And that voice is in my head. It has never left my head. I am 82 and I can still hear that glorious voice telling us about our economic Bill of Rights. I'll tell you what a right is. Actually, I'll tell you what an entitlement is. An entitlement is not a bad word. They made it a bad word. But an entitlement is a right. When you're entitled to something, you have a right to that. And Roosevelt told us what we had a right to. Unfortunately, he died before he was able to get those rights. And I intend to do all I can do to finish his work, okay, and to go beyond it, whether I've got mine or not. So that's where we come from with respect to it. Lana says, please talk again about the site for the states again, the one payer states .org.
Yep.
Any more comments about that, Laura?
Just that I hope that people go and continue to share it out, let people know, because I think there's a lot of people. Give you an example. A few months back, I was on Sabby Sabs. She's now part of the Fred Hampton Left. But prior to her joining the Fred Hampton Left's media platform, I was on her show. She had reached out to ask if I would come on to talk about the Red Berets in whole Washington. And I told her about, hey, the March for Medicare for All is happening. But meanwhile, her interviewing me about whole Washington urged her or got her thinking about searching what's going on in her own state. She didn't know that there was a bill in her own legislature in Massachusetts. So now the local organizers of the March for Medicare for All they included that very much in their local organizing. They got some wonderful local press for that, and now they've since been doing some actions to pressure a couple of the holdouts. So this is really the power of grassroots organizing. So I would just say, yes, go and look on onepayerstates.org. Share it out with people because people may not even be aware that there's something going on that they can plug into in their own state. I would also say, again, to shout out, I think that you've said, Joe, that you'll invite Georgia Davenport on, and then she can kind of talk about some of her, because she's done a lot of work with one payer states, has helped them out with the website, and we've got some people that are on the board of one payer states who are also on the board of Whole Washington. So good, strong coalition partners there. And that Georgia can talk about some of the efforts that she's doing to educate groups in different states about how to run ballot initiatives. Let's get some people going on this because this is bottom up. This is direct democracy. We need to be out in the streets. That's one of the strengths. There's been a lot of no, I'm not going to name drop, but let's just say that there have been people in the single payer movement who, they talk about how much money is going to be required to successfully run a ballot initiative, and there's been some failures in time. And I always think when someone comes from that perspective, it's a little hilarious because all we have are legislative failures as well. So why is running legislation somehow hailed as the right way to do things, but ballot initiatives are like looked down upon. I want to change the face of how people think about that because ballot initiatives are really the last vestige of democracy that we have now. They're direct democracy. Let's start glorifying ballot initiatives for those states that are fortunate enough to have the power to go out and engage face to face and take it to the people, either through an initiative to the people or an initiative to the legislature. And it's probably different in all different states. And this is something
Right, and the rules are slightly different.
how the worlds are slightly different, but either way, we're going out and having conversations, and we're letting like and then I know you got to get back to the comments, but I just want to say the power of
Oh,
this.
it's
When I was gathering signatures, there was somebody, and I have many of these stories that I could tell, but just one person stands out that wasn't going to sign just 1362 recently. I was out front of a local Whole Foods sort of type store local here, and somebody, I asked, "You want to sign to put universal health care on the ballot?" And he said, "No, I don't support that." And sometimes I would just let that go, but in that instant, I said, "Well." Because sometimes I just go with my instinct, and I said, did you know that this would give us the power to negotiate for the price of pharmaceuticals? Do you think that we need to do something?" He said, "Yeah, hell yeah, we need to do that. We're getting screwed so bad by that." And I said, "Well, this legislation would give us the power to negotiate that. And also, do you believe that our representatives are taking all this corporate, that we have any representation left, or are they all corrupt?" And he's like, "Yeah, that." And I said, "Well, let's try and let's get it to the ballot, and then you can go and look at the details. And if you don't want to vote for it, that's okay. But this is just us saying, let's have a vote on this. This is direct democracy." So I'd like other states to be doing this, and for no other reason than we need to get out in our communities. And like I was saying, in some of those feeds, when the MMT, the way that you reached out and the way that Amber reached out through the MMT community to sort of, you reach out and then you learn, oh yeah, here's how the Red Berets could be helping to spread and share about MMT. This is very important. But you don't do that by saying what you're doing is terrible. Don't be doing democracy. Uh, so now we get to have this conversation of how can we put some MMT resources up on the Red Berets website? When I go out and we table and we do direct actions, how can we help the MMT community? This is how we build partnerships, and we can do that together but we do that through saying, look, I don't know what I think about this. I have some concerns. I have some, that's fine. But do recognize the value of direct democracy and getting out to do that. That's completely outside. It's a different lens. As I said before, it's a movement building
It is.
lens. And we need people out doing that work. And you can either recognize that there's all these people willing to get out and do that work, and you say, oh, can you please also try to mention MMT to people as you're out there? Or here's a, if you have some literature, or where's your next event? And we'll come out and we'll share our MMT literature. Great. I would say the more the merrier. And that sounds really important. Thank you. That is only accomplished when you reach out and say, how can we work together? Okay. I think I
Yeah,
made
when you build the coalitions.
And we build the coalitions. Yeah.
So Shane Coughlin says, I have a question for Laura. Does she support what I call the failed experiment, okay, of justice Dems, the ones who sit there and refuse to fight, time to primary AOC from the real the left? Question mark. And so that's his first question.
I well, I exited the Democratic Party, and I attend People's Party meetings, not very regularly, by the way, but I'm all for building a coalition government. So what I would say about that is I don't think that we can. I consider it failed to the extent that it can't be the only strategy. Like, we can't just continue to try to elect more Democrats under Justice Democrats. I think that we also need to choose a few districts. If we're just talking electorally, we're going to need to get some independents in. If we all we need is a few independents or people from People's Party, Green Party, and then that coalition, then they get to caucus with the Democrats. So I'm not really here to say let's throw all of it overboard. I think I spoke earlier to just how my personal faith in that experiment is no longer there. But I would say, I think, to what you were saying, Joe, I think this can kind of flip on a dime. Like, no, don't write them off yet, because I think that they will feel emboldened and empowered. But we do need some outside people. We need some outside parties. That's my own personal opinion. I just don't think the power structure lends itself. I don't believe that just electing more progressive Democrats, like just increasing their numbers alone, is the solution. I don't think that will work. I think that there has to be some outside pressure who can absolutely speak. I mean, I would love to be wrong, and if we could see the progressive elected caucus turning and exposing the corruption and being willing to speak much more boldly, and also endorse more progressives. But see, we see weakness on both of those fronts. And that to me says that it is in many ways a failed strategy. Again, I wouldn't throw it all out entirely. I would just say that on its own, it's not enough.
And then Shane kind of narrowed his question.
What was the second part?
Said, as much as I like Jason Cole and support what he's doing with whole Washington, he's still a Democrat and a Justice Democrat. At that, how do we know he won't be co-opted like the rest of the squad was?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know anything like that. I can just say that it's easy. I can endorse him because I've organized with him and known him for 4 years now, and he's been an organizer. He's been an anti-war organizer for many, many years, for decades, really. And that he co-wrote and pushed to put some of the most progressive things on the Washington, as a state committee member, to put for example, to pass universal health care and make sure that universal health care was on the Washington State Democratic Party platform. So he and, state committee member Georgia Davenport and many other state committee members have pushed really, really hard to at least make sure that it was on the Dem platform. Again, which is like, whatever, what can we do with that? But it is a pressure point, and it's why the National Democrats won't put it on. They know, because they know it's one more pressure point. It's one more tool that we can use to.
And they don't want to give us that tool.
They don't want to give us that because it does give us leverage, and they want to make sure at all costs that they block that from happening. So, I don't know that I can give you any kind of of course, I can't predict or guarantee the future, but I can just say I have in my phone of photo receipts, I have video after video of Jason organizing locally and working to build coalitions. And I would also say coming out to speak at the March for Medicare for All. There were quite a few. I'm not calling Nina Turner or anybody else out for not. I'm just saying, I think that it was a bold action for Jason to come out and so strongly support the March for Medicare for All and to speak in Seattle. So he is a bold progressive. I have a lot of faith in him, and and to the extent that we can't predict the future, you know what I'm saying. But based on his past and current actions, I endorse him, and I feel confident.
All right, and I also feel confident. Okay, and I don't know what my endorsement is worth, but he has my endorsement too. So there it is. So Jeff Denton says, in response to Shane, he says, here in Washington State, my congressman is Rick Larson,
Yeah.
who let the Boeing company simply regulate itself, and airplanes full of people fell out of the sky. Why don't you strangely, weirdly, oddly obsess over him? Or did some freshman congresswoman in a tiny little district in Brooklyn do something worse than that? But I haven't heard.
Well, I don't know, but I mean that's the very, very right wing corporate incumbent that Jason Call is challenging. So we're very well aware here in Washington State of the harm that Rep. Larson is doing, and that is, I proudly donate and support Jason Call's campaign. Larson is the most right wing and corporately owned politician in all of. That's saying a lot. People think that Washington State is super progressive. We're very progressive as an electorate, but we actually, we have here in my district Representative Kilmer, who is, quite a personable politician, but he's chair of the New Democrats. And despite the fact that I wish the political climate was such that everybody could run People's Party or as an independent, that is something I very strongly support. I also do, having text banked for Georgia Davenport when she ran for state rep. I do also understand that there's a difference between the online left and the reality that is still currently that a lot of people are still baked into the two-party system. Now, if you want to go out and change that and canvass and build up an effort to pave the way for politicians to run third party, go do it. I advocate for that very strongly. But I also say that if, those people like Rebecca Parson who are going to be running as Democrats as it stands right now, we need to get her in. So I don't know what to say about that. It's a real conundrum. I definitely agree that we need to support independents who are running. So I love this. I want to give a shout out really fast to this little group called the Ragtag Band, again on Twitter. But they boosted the Red Berets in Whole Washington some time back, and what I love about them is that they do a Twitter boost of all these different of like they schedule a particular candidate, or in the case of Red Berets in whole Washington, a particular group, and they do like a 2 hour window where they choose a hashtag, and then they gather all of the graphics and website and stuff that they're wanting to boost, and then everybody blasts it out and they share that out and they try to boost that particular candidate. Well, what I love about them, and they're on my pin tweet, if those that you are following me on Twitter, I actually utilized a pin tweet that they did that kind of gives. Okay, I get too many ideas going in my head at once, and because also I'm trying to talk fast so you can get back to your comments. But
Very late.
they too late. Sorry. Um, they um, they endorse they yes, they're endorsing a lot of Democrat candidates, but also in their list of endorsements is they've got a couple of Green Party and a couple of independents. So I really like this inside outside approach where it's possible, you know, and there are some districts, everybody's got to measure that for themselves. I do support trying to get a few independents and other parties in. We have to do this, but
Right.
but also, if there's a really amazing candidate that I see that walks the walk, and I've seen them organizing and they're out and they are running as a Democrat, I don't have a lot of energy for it, but at the same time, I recognize we need chair of the New Democrats, Rep. Kilmer, out of that seat.
Right,
Out
right, right,
of that seat.
right. And by the way, it could be that the most important thing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has done was to get rid of Joe Crowley. In other words, we've kind of forgotten about that. But that is very, very important because Joe Crowley was being tagged as the successor to Nancy Pelosi. And he would have been worse. And she knocked him off. And we got to thank her for that. And by the way, Jeff, she's not from a tiny little district, okay, in Brooklyn. She's from a tiny little district that stretches over the Bronx, okay, and Queens. And it so happens that the part of the district, okay, that's in the Bronx is the part of her district, okay, where I come from. And she is the congressman for the place that I was brought up in. So please don't say she comes from Brooklyn, because that doesn't sit well with me. Of course, it's irrelevant, but you know, all these little personal things, get involved in stuff that we think. Shane Coffin says, I interviewed Jason after his last loss. He's a really nice guy, but he's still a politician in the Democratic Party. Well, yes, we recognize that, but that's not all that he is. And that's the point. And we have a right to hope. In other words, all this idea of Democratic Party determinism may hold 95% of the time, but it may not hold 100% of the time. And Jason right now looks like it's not going to hold for him. He looks like he's going to be a thorn in their side, whether he's a Democrat, okay, or not. And so that's why I endorse him. Okay, going through this then a little faster. So Dave Leith has made another important comment here, but I don't think we're going to have time to go through that one. And Jason also has a good comment. There are a lot of good comments here. So the comment thread ought to be reviewed because I really don't have time to go over everything. We're at 11:39 already. So let me try to catch up a bit here. Jeff Denton says, Jayapal tweeted about Afghan families. And I tweeted back that if she actually cared about families, she would publicly acknowledge that whole Washington even exists. For 2 years, I have been nice, but curt with her. But this is the meanest thing I've said to her so far. Maybe she needs a mean thing or two to wake up, because she is getting very involved in double standards these days, and has been for quite a long time now.
It's true.
And Carmen says, the magical strategy is having the answer when people ask, how are you going to pay for it? Is there a clear-cut answer? Okay, in layman's terms, yes. There is a very clear-cut answer, okay, in layman's terms. Okay, it simply is, well, I'm going to pay for it in the same way we've always paid for it. The Congress is going to appropriate the money. The Federal Reserve is going to create the additions to the Treasury spending account. And once the Treasury has those additions, it's going to obey the orders of Congress, and it's going to spend that money into the private sector. That's all we're saying. There's nothing magical concerning that. That's what MMT says, basically, okay, is going to happen. Now, someone gets deeper, okay, and they asked, how is that money from the Federal Reserve going to get into the Treasury spending account? That's a more complicated answer, but that's not the same as the question, okay, of how you're going to pay for it. So people have to know enough to ask the successor question. I, of course, have the answer to those questions, and you, Carmen, as someone who watches this show every single time, knows what my answers are to that particular question. But I don't think most people are going to ask that question because it's too much in the weeds for them. So going further, looks like Sandy Degg has a problem. Sandy says, but Norcross in New Jersey is very involved with corporate health care. I wish people would stop voting for him. Who's the congressman, okay, in Norcross, New Jersey? Is it Josh Gottheimer, by any chance? And Kay says, can you run ads? Okay, to that effect, Sandy. Sandy says, I don't think I could afford it. He's very wealthy. Kay says, is there an org there that can help you, Sandy? She says, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. So there's a lot of discussion, okay, about that. Carmen says, what is NEMA's stance, okay, on an issue such as ivermectin for treatment when it comes to the COVID-19? I don't think NEMA has a stand on this. I think the Jayapal bill has language that would cover the use, okay, of ivermectin if this was a treatment that had been approved by physicians. I think you're asking a more subtle question, Carmen, okay, and that is whether the structure of HR 1976 would allow a physician to use ivermectin for treatment in a clinical situation if the particular physician wanted to use it. And I would say that's probably possible, but it's going to depend on the way certain hospitals, okay, are run. And that part is beyond the scope, okay, of the NEMA bill. In other words, that's an area where hospitals have a certain freedom to organize their own procedures, their own codes, and that the bill is probably silent on that. So Amber says, I can't say enough great things I can't say enough great things about Laura. She's a beacon of light. She's a natural leader. She's open-minded, and most importantly, she's kind. You can have an amazing conversations with her when folks approach in good faith and with good intentions. We're so lucky and blessed to have her with us, along with the whole Washington, okay, and RB, keeping those grassroots watered. Love and solidarity from the Tri-Cities. So that's your message from Amber for tonight.
Thank you, Amber. Amber really deserves a lot of credit for helping to connect us up, and make sure that we could start to build some solidarity and get some of us who are not educated in MMT but do care very much about the health and the growth of the movement. I just think, thank you, Amber.
She probably had something to do, actually, with my getting involved, okay, and looking, okay, at the Red Berets in the first place.
Yeah.
The reason why I say that, okay, is because I know Amber, okay, from RP, and I know some of the reasons why she left RP, which were similar to reasons, okay, why I left RP. Okay, so between Amber and I, there's a certain degree of trust. So when I saw that she was a supporter, that was a reason for me to look into it.
Yeah.
So, okay, there are a number of other comments, and I think they're very good comments. I'm sorry, okay, that I won't be able to cover them, but I think that it's time for us to say goodnight anyway. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you very much for staying, and thank you very much for all the comments. I will review them when we get off, and I will try to answer some if they survive the live stream. And Russ Goldman has already said good night, and a number of other people.
And also, I just, I want to say, thank you for understanding and sort of apologies, because I know I can be wordy, and I also know that I had a lot to share. So that the cost of that, of my being able to share, was some of your comments being able to be read. And I just want to thank all of you for leaving the comments and for watching and understanding. Letting me take the time, really.
Okay, and I want to thank you for that, okay, as well. But I also want to point out that what you had to say was part of sketching the picture, okay, of what the cooperative effort is about, and it was part of making clear what is meant by fighting, okay, on all fronts. And so I think that was very necessary to the great success that I think this particular live stream was.
Yeah.
So I thank you all for taking part. I will be back on Saturday. What I plan now for Saturday is I'm trying to make a connection to get the Green Party candidate who's running for governor of California to come on the show. So far, I've been unsuccessful, okay, in actually making a connection with him. But I feel like I must do something, however small, to try to get a fire lit for him, okay, in California, because of what Newsom is doing there is just criminal. And it harms our chances for Medicare for all. It harms the chances of single payer. in California. So I would like to see a governor get in there who would sign a single payer bill. I think that's very, very important. And I know the chance, okay, of Kaplowitz actually winning is so very, very tiny now. But I still think we should try to do something about that. Because we know single payer is not going to pass under Larry Elder or one of the other schlubs who's running there.
I think I followed the person you're talking about or looked at your feed. Will you do me a favor, Joe? And whenever you get around to it, will you select like his pinned tweet and at me in it? And then what I'm going to do is add that to this group called Progressive Coup that has the ragtag, the ones that do the boosts. And
Okay.
I will ask them to take a look at this person and see if that could be somebody that they'd be willing to amplify. And also, healthcare for all Los Angeles that's trying to put that, with AB4. I think there'd be a lot of people that would be interested in at least placing the pressure and getting the word out. So we can do that. Let's work on that together. That sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's indeed work on that. That would be great. So everybody is saying good night, and they want you to come back soon. I want you to come back soon too. Okay, and Michelle de Villiers says, thank you, Laura, for your love, okay, and inspiration. Okay, and Bonnie says she wants you to come back too.
Yes.
You'll have your red berets soon, and
in just a couple of days. And Steve Wolfbrand says, I just voted for him. He says, I just voted for him. Thank you, Steve. I'm glad to know that there was someone, okay, who voted for Dan Kaplowitz. I think he is a good candidate and a good person, certainly better than any of the others that I've seen in that race so far. And besides, our daughter lives, okay, in California, and I want to see her have a decent governor.
and a shot at single payer.
And a shot at single payer.
Yeah.
Absolutely a shot.
Yeah.
At single payer.
Yeah.
So Jeff Denton says, Laura asked me to admin the Red Berets Facebook group in the fall of 2017. She created the most well-organized rally in March I've ever been to in May of 2018. After we failed to get enough signatures for the ballot by initiative, she started networking on Twitter, and I started to network the hell out of it on Facebook. That was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
We've come a long way since.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks for everything that you do. I'm hardly ever on Facebook, but I appreciate you and everything you do on Facebook and organizing, showing up in your red beret. Yeah.
Steve Wolfbrand says, I want to see Doc in a red beret. I promise you, Steve, I will wear my red beret in the live stream as soon as I get it.
You and Bonnie have choices because of the guilt. Catholic guilt still runs me. Because you waited for so long for them that I wanted to send extra. So there's a beret for each of you that's knit by me, and then there's a beret crocheted by Michelle Devier for both of you. So there's 4 berets coming. So now you have a wardrobe change. You don't have to get. Everyone needs a beret, but we're building a movement here. Nobody needs to get bored. And I will say crochet, I think, is the best medium for berets. But I love my knitting, and I like to have both hands. Like, I love my knitting needles. So anyway, but looking
Well,
forward.
we will proudly wear them both.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. It's not a competition. It's a beautiful thing to see all the crafts come forward and shine. And it's one of my greatest joys is to see somebody post pictures and I'm like just astounded at the talent. You know, I can craft some pretty awesome things, but it's also just wonderful to see these pictures of. There was a crafter who actually posted, and she's mailed them out here. She did red berets and she designed this pattern, and it's on the whole back of the beret it's a marijuana leaf, because
Right.
so she combined medical marijuana, legalizing marijuana, with the Medicare for all, and they were gorgeous. So the creativity over the years that's come out of this, when you inspire people with a basic idea but then give them the freedom to just create, is quite beautiful and astounding. So
Right. And on that note, I have to make a comment in response to Steve Wolfbrand's last comment. Why not mass produce the berets? China can make them for $1. Yes, we know that, Steve, but that misses the whole point.
I think he's being facetious, hopefully, right? If not, Steve, you're fired.
No, he's not fired. He's an integral part. Okay.
I know. I'm just kidding. I see his comments on all of so I know he is, and I think he's being sarcastic. No, we need this labor of love, and for people to hopefully start to appreciate craftivism once again. If somebody considers the hours that go into create, I mean, I haven't been knitting constantly, but I've gotten quite a few rows done as we've been talking here, but I'm far from finished with this beret. They're really a lot of hours, and we do that intentionally to show this is the labor of love of craftivism. We're willing to take the time, and each stitch. This is the dedication that is the Red Berets, and so I hope people will support and order these. And I understand that we have to charge a bit for them because we're trying to raise money for a ballot initiative and whatever efforts that we support in the future. But that the human labor does deserve to be supported and valued. And I'm hoping that Red Berets can bring a bit of this back to our consciousness, because it's kind of a lost art. So
yes, it is. It's a lost art, and it means it has meaning in a way that Chinese berets would not have. It stands for the tapestry of the movement.
Yes,
and
very well put.
Is very, very important.
Yeah.
So, on that note, good night, folks. I will be back on Saturday night, hopefully with Dan, but if not, then by myself. I will probably have a lot to say. And next week, I'll be asking some other people who are recommended by Laura to come on. And I also have some other people, that I'd like to have conversations with, as well. And I still will be covering the news. And so we love you all out there, and especially UK. So take it easy, and I'll see you Saturday.